Harry here from Urban Specialty Woods. Today's another workshop, and we're going to use Festool Tools to make a live edge table. This is a project you can do at home. So please join me and my team, Jazz, Don, and Sal, and follow along.
Why would you want to use one of these bow ties? First of all, the bow tie is a joint. It's not really an ornament. It's a joint. It's got a function. And the function is you're trying to stop this crack that's happened in the wood. Okay, so you've got, for whatever reason, you had a lot of tension in this piece. It's split, and it's there. You're not going to really put it back together again, but you don't want it to get any worse. So you can arrest the development. I had to get that arrested development in there. You can arrest the progression of this crack further down. Now, there's people on either side of the discussion whether or not you want to see the bow ties. Some people don't like the bow ties. Some people do like it, and they want to just make it a feature. So don't try to hide it. Use a contrasting wood, make it nice and big, whatever. You can put a series of them in. I see them in almost like stitches. The bow tie itself is it's basically a double dovetail. Is exactly what it is. In fact, it's a dovetail on a number of levels. Number one, it has that shape, and it's not an accidental shape. It's actually the same proportion. When you design this, you want to use the same kind of numbers that you would use for a dovetail. So 1 to 6, 1 to 8, whatever. You take a ruler like this, you come across 1, you go down 6, right? That gives you your angle there, and that's how much you have on either side. So you would go 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8. Those are standard dovetail proportions. I don't even know what the angle is. You don't even think about it. You just think of that ratio. And so basically you're doing a mirror image of a double dovetail, and it does the same job as a dovetail in that you're keeping something from pulling away from this dovetail. Obviously it can't expand in that direction. So you're going to go with your dovetail across your crack. And very important, I've seen this done the wrong way. When you cut your dovetail, you got to make sure you're going long grain. It seems obvious to me. If you were going short grain, you defeat the purpose. It could just split apart. Okay? So you have this long grain on it can be a very small piece over this crack that's really going to stabilize it. Now let's say you don't really want it to show, but you still want to have the benefit of it. You can always just put them on the bottom. Okay? If you have a thick piece, maybe 1.5 inches or more, I'm going to suggest that you put the bow ties on both sides to really support that crack. Now, as far as where you put it or how many you put it, that's up to you. Actually, one of these would stop this crack from going anywhere. If you want to play with it, I mean, this is an extreme crack. You're not going to really work with something like this. But let's say you've got this much of a crack. It stops. You can put it out near the end. You can put it anywhere along this crack, and it's going to do the same job. Okay, so what I do is I'll find some wood that I want to use for the actual bow tie or butterfly, whatever you want to call it. I just made these today just to show how you could incorporate some interesting grain in there and really make it a fancy thing. You want it to be a hardwood. Okay, I don't recommend using pine for this. And what I do is I made up a bunch of little templates out of hardboard. You could also do it I was thinking of making them out of clear plexi, because then you could see the grain through there. Doesn't really matter. So I've got a couple different sizes, and they all have roughly the same proportion of the 6 to 1 on there. Here's an extreme one that's even bigger. You want to make sure that the actual piece that you're working with is thick enough that it's going to have some strength to it. So I wouldn't recommend these little 3/16 ones. They're a little light. Most of these are about 3/8. You could go up to maybe a 1/2 inch. So you can take your little templates here, lay them out, see which one you think is the best size, where you want to put it, and so forth. Once you've decided, and I'm going to use the large one today, with the largest of these three, and you'll take your stock that you're going to use. I'll trace it out And this actual accuracy on this is minimally important, because what really is it's all going to be best based on the actual piece you have. I'll show you in a second. So when I use this to trace it, I'm just getting close. I'm going to cut this out on the bandsaw, jigsaw. I could cut this out by hand. What I'll actually do is actually line this up parallel with the grain so I can do a chop saw or table saw cut and get a nice straight line. Then I really just have these 4 to cut. And when I cut it out, I want to get a pretty nice straight corner. When I end up with my finished piece, I want everything nice and crisp and tight. We mentioned before, you can get these inside-outside templates and a little rub collar and you route it out. What's going to happen with that is you're going to still have a rounded corner here. You're going to have a rounded corner here, and then if you don't want that, you either have to round over your butterfly then, or you have to get in there and clean that out with a chisel. And you'll see this process isn't that complicated. You don't really need a jig for it. And look at the tools that I have. There's really almost nothing here that you're not going to have in the shop. When I design these, I try to think of the chisel I want to use for the end of this, so it should be obviously less than this. Obviously, if I want to cut this one out and I only have a 1-inch chisel, I'm going to have a problem getting in there. So it's nice to be able to cut out your mortise with the right width of chisel that you have. So for example, this one matches this 1-inch chisel. I can get right in there. You'll see when I do the process. And then we have a little trim router. You could use one of these little just straight 2 flute bits, and I happen to like the spiral bits. They clean it out a little cleaner. This would be a nice application for the plunge, but you can also do it with this. I'm going to use the fixed base just to show you if that's all you have, that you can still do this and you don't have to worry about the depth so much. I have a file that I use for cleaning up my edges, because after the bandsaw you're going to see it's a little ragged. Back to the hardwood. These are strictly for showing you about where you want to put this. Once you've traced this and you've cut this out, we're done with these, okay? We're done with our measuring because we use that to create these. Knife, very important. If I'm working in walnut or hardwood, I love to use these like a white or a yellow pencil so I can see what I'm doing. I also like these little 5mm ones because I can get a nice crispy line there, but you can't beat this for actually tracing. So I'll use a utility knife, a sharp one, to trace once I've got my bow tie cut out. These are going to help to clean out my mortise, which I'm going to make with the router. If you didn't have a router, you could always use one of these little router planes, and even with the router you might want to use it to clean out the corner, so these are handy. I also made a auxiliary base which gets the bottom of this up off the table, and this is going to be used to flush trim this once I've put the thing in. You'll see that's a handy thing. Mallet is good to have, and a vise of some sort. I'm using this to improvise. Once I've cut these out on the bandsaw, what I want to do is I want to have all these edges flat, nice and square this way, and nice and crisp corners. So fair and square. Fairing it is leveling all this out, squaring it is doing that. When I put this in the mortise, I don't want to have a gap on the top. So if I do anything, I want to have just a tiny 1/2 degree cut inwards toward the bottom of this. But if I can get it perfectly straight, that's really ideal. I want to get these corners nice and crisp, and I want this a nice intersection here. All of that because when you're done, around the bow tie you want it nice and neat, like a real dovetail. You don't want to have a lot of gaps that you have to fill afterwards. So right off the bandsaw, that's not going to happen. So what I want to do is clean these up a little bit, and I want to be sure that I pay attention to the top and the bottom of this. So I'll just put a mark on here so I know what my top is.